Hello and welcome back. Today, I am really looking forward to interviewing Jordan Bain, who runs Modern Mystery School Boston here in the greater Boston area. And we will talk about the Empower Thyself initiation. So, first and foremost, welcome, Jordan.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm glad we're back talking. We talked about Kabbalah last time, and I think it's really fun that we're doing this series.
Yeah, absolutely. So much more comes out. I could sit and chat about Empower Thyself, but on my own, I'm only going to speak to certain things. And here, speaking with you, international senior teacher and guide, so much more is going to come out. So I'm really excited.
I feel the same. It's really, bouncing back and forth like this just allows for so much more, just a dynamic interaction that I learn something every time when I do these podcasts. So thanks
Yeah,
for
and
having
as
me.
we'll talk about Empower Thyself, in a way, there's so much to speak to about it because it is so much more than simply a 2 day seminar or something, although that's what it looks like on the surface. And so each one of us is going to bring our own insights to this too.
Absolutely. Yeah. So where do you want to start?
My first question or thought topic would be, why is the Empower Thyself course or training initiation so important for people now? Like, what's its purpose in people's lives today?
Yeah, I think that really speaks to why the mystery school is public, right? Because the mystery school was private or secret or behind closed doors for thousands of years. And, in the last 30 years, it's come out to the public as something that, you know, are we public like we're on national TV? No, not yet, because most people aren't ready for that. Might that happen in your lifetime, in my lifetime? Maybe, possibly, quite likely in certain capacities, yes. But there's awareness, I think, in most people that's growing of, we need something. We need something other than the norms of, well, what society presents as this is the way to do things. This is how to grow. This is how to progress. I think that a lot of people bump up against like a glass ceiling in their own life in terms of, well, how do I get over this hump? How do I get over this thing that's stopping me in my life? How do I, whatever it might be, maybe it's a blockage in my marriage, maybe it's something in my professional career, maybe I'm very fulfilled in those areas, because for most high functioning adults, there's the relationship and family, there's the thing that I do in the world, and there's not a lot of time for anything else. There's, maybe I can stay healthy and take care of my body, but things fit into like a very small number of boxes for most people. So it usually takes some kind of disruption in those boxes that we live in. And I don't say that in a negative, I'm not talking about boxes in some sort of, Pink Floyd brick in the wall kind of, hippie 1970s stuff. I'm talking about uh, constructive containers that we live inside of, that we need for our lives. And usually there's some kind of disruption in one or more of the containers in our life that makes us seek greater understanding of what's really going on. That makes us ask those kinds of questions, because entering into the mysteries of life more deeply requires questions. If you're not curious and you don't have questions, then the universe doesn't open anything new. You're just on a track going in a certain direction. So, I think we live in a really, really fast changing world where those those containers, those boxes that people live inside of, and again, in a very good way, we need a container, just like we're here in the container of a Zoom call. And you're in your office and I'm in my office. And if I was just out in a parking lot somewhere, it's not really a good container for having a podcast because it's noisy and there's chaos. So the container creates the space, and inside that space, that's where the thing happens. That's where our family doesn't happen in just a park. Our family happens in a house. This work doesn't occur in a parking lot, it occurs in an office, right? So these containers that we have for our lives really, really matter, and they're changing faster than ever.
No parking lot Empower Thyself classes, right, Jordan?
No parking lot empower thyself classes or podcasts, really.
Or podcasts. No,
Uh,
no, no, no.
and so if we're talking about people seeking more, people looking for deeper insights into themselves, into what is maybe stopping them or holding them back. Because usually when life is flowing really, really beautifully and there's no questions, there's no new answers, there's no new insights. The box is intact. It's usually not until there starts to be a crack somewhere in that box. Maybe the marriage isn't working the way we thought it would. Maybe something's not working out well in our health. Maybe in our career, we're asking different questions. Maybe it's all fine on the surface, but just somewhere deep down inside. And I think this is where a lot of people fall into these days. Like their job is okay, their marriage is fine, the kids are good, but something inside is saying that there's a misalignment with something. Something is not quite clicking the way that it should be, or maybe the way that it felt like it used to click. And so we start scratching our heads and maybe staying up late at night or
Google searching,
Google searching,
late
AI
night, 2
chat
a.m.
botting. Right.
What's my purpose?
What's my purpose? Asking ChatGPT and programming it to talk like Mahatma Gandhi to us and or like Buddha Jesus to us and asking ourselves deep questions and that's really good. That's a really good thing that's happening because it creates space for the world to actually change. In the mystery school tradition, we talk a lot about hermetic principles. And in hermetics, everything starts within. The world is the outside manifestation of what has started inside of us. And yes, it reflects the other way, but it doesn't actually get created the other way. The world isn't being created outside of us, and then we're just reflecting on it inside. And some people live that way. They might not say that they're living that way, but they think that way. Oh, my life has presented me with a set of circumstances. My life has presented me with a way of being. I grew up in a certain family with a certain religion, a certain belief system, a certain attitude about men and women, about money, about my value, all these things that my skin color, like the concepts of the self that we grow up with, the country that I'm born in. I'm born in America, so that means fill in the blank, right? And there's explicit aspects of that, but most of it's implicit. Most of it's pretty subconscious and it's filtered and it just sits back there as adults and we're not very aware of it. So those things, whether they lead to a more high functioning life or a less high functioning life, isn't really relevant here. It's just that eventually, hopefully, if we're lucky, there's a crack in that box and we start to see through the to borrow a line or a concept of the movies of the Matrix from the late 90s and early 2000s. Like we start to see glitches in the matrix of our life, things that aren't working the way that we thought they would be working.
Yeah. I like what you said first, like about the glass ceiling, because I think that a lot of people can relate to that. I know that that's part of how I found the mystery school was that I had pretty early, I was like 25, 26, and I'd already hit this limit of science, of scientific research, and feeling a sense of like, well, this really can't answer the questions that I thought it could answer. And I also work with a lot of other people, as you're talking about the boxes, who their children have grown, they've raised their children, and now they're in a different time of their life. And so, to your point, that container, which was appropriate, which was correct, which was the right thing for so many years, now naturally is going through an upgrade. But that's very uncomfortable for people. And it does bring through what we're talking about a little, that soul searching of, okay, well, what's the next container? What's the next right structure for my life now that this family that I've raised, my children are more independent. Maybe they live somewhere else now, they have families of their own. Meanwhile, you still have quite a lot of value, quite a lot of life, obviously, left to give, and quite a lot of wisdom that you can still share. So it's like, how do we transform? Basically, like you're saying, the inner world, ourselves, but ultimately create a new container through which we can now, I don't want to say serve the world because some people might not have that calling, but continue to find our place within the world, to find our appropriate role, whether it's in the family, career, or in otherwise.
Yeah. And I picked up a lot of threads in what I was just saying earlier. And I think one of the beauties of podcasting is you don't have to finish all the threads.
Yeah.
that we start.
There would be too many threads. If we
We can
finished
leave
every
them.
single one, this would be 3 hours long.
Right. We can leave them for the next time. And people will come back and watch more because there's no end to talking about life. It's endless. Life and light and mystery of who we are. Um and making that practical because this is the mystery school is not a school of just mysticism and just going up and having a spiritual experience on the spiritual mountain and then coming down and staring at our navel and talking about it. It's about living a different kind of life. It's about changing the very fabric of the inner workings that lead to that life on the outside. So hermetically, I change what is inside, my life changes on the outside. So back to that rapidly shifting environment that we live in, one of the huge things that happens in the mystery school is we give people tools to actually navigate that environment of their life, navigate the box that they're in and the box that they want to move to. Because we don't want to spend a lot of time in between boxes, right? Like the time in
Well, that's
between boxes.
stressful. That's where we feel like there's nothing beneath our feet and the sky's falling down.
Right. It's scary. And like you can lose your mind in that,
Mm.
right? Like we don't, the people who are homeless in the gutter are the people who, didn't have a box to move into, literally and metaphorically. They couldn't create the next container. Maybe there's people who are living in the gutter who were very successful before, but
Actually,
they
probably
didn't.
quite a bit. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
things were fine and then they weren't fine, and there's usually drugs involved with that. But many of those people have stories of, they got in a car accident or they were injured or they were playing sports and they got injured, whatever it was. And then they had to have surgery and they got on opioids and they got addicted. And then they couldn't handle that anymore. I mean, there's many, many, many reasons why people end up, for example, homeless, which is the ultimate expression of not having a box,
Yeah.
not having a container, right?
Yeah.
So the time in between something is a scary, tenuous, shifting time. And we want to be able to navigate from the box that I'm in now to the box that I want to be in the future and have this box that I'm heading toward, this container, this newer positive reality be clear, be filled with understanding and wisdom, ideally, be filled with the good qualities of the things that we really want in life. And that's all well and good to think about, but then actually creating it, we say in the mystery school, the mind can only function according to its program. And the program is based in the old box. It's based in the past. So I could maybe create a new box that's very similar to the old box, but it's
Which
going to
I
be
know I tried to do. I was like, I don't like this anymore. Let me apply for jobs that are all from my box. So they're all going to be more or less the same. You're just changing the title.
right. When you're changing the actors, that you'll see different faces and different people every day, but
Right.
they're going to end up mirroring the same things back to you. They're, they might have different names and different nationalities and different belief systems than the people at your old job, but you're going to probably end up feeling the same at the end of the day.
Yeah.
After, like, once the newness of something wears off, the newness of the new job, the new situation, the new relationship, you'll realize that you're back in the same um, overall container. It looks new, it smells new, but it's really a repeat. So, and eventually it will be boring too. And then so when we go through enough cycles of that, and no judgment, it takes whatever it takes. Maybe it takes you one cycle of that. Maybe it takes you 10 cycles. Maybe you never learn it over the course of your whole lifetime. But someone who's watching this podcast probably has been through enough cycles where they're saying, the old box, I don't want to carry most of that into the new box, or I only want to carry the good parts, but not the bad parts. I don't want to carry the things that I felt like I was struggling with or were challenging. I'd like to eliminate that. I'd like to focus on the good and then expand into a new way of being. And that usually requires tools. For most people, they're going to need to be able to take their mind into a new inner state of being in order to successfully build a new box that will last. So that brings us back to myself, to the self. If I want to change the container that I live my life in, I have to change. How do I change? I need tools to change. It's one thing to say I want to get in shape. It's another thing to actually have a workout plan. And then another thing to actually go to the gym and do it.
I actually sometimes talk about the mystery school as a spiritual gym where you get an instructor who has the curriculum. Okay, if you want to grow this way, we have a certain exercise for you. If you want to get really strong, abs, we have a certain exercise program for you. And it's like, not only do you get the equipment that you need and the structure and, that overarching space like we're talking about, but as well, now you have a guide who can actually assist you with what are your goals? Where is it you're trying to head with this? Okay, we want to use this machine for 30 minutes a day, 6 days a week. But it's so true. I mean, I'm saying it sounds funny. It's a funny metaphor. And yet I actually think it's really accurate.
It's really accurate, and it goes pretty far in explaining, how this can be approached by a student. Because having tools, we have to use them.
Yeah.
Having a tool and not using it is like having a gym membership and not going, which is, what the fitness industry depends on. But that's not how we work as a mystery school. You know,
No.
we hope that you get the tools and you put them to work. And that's one of the ways that this is really different than like just going to a class or a seminar or a workshop. And at a class or a seminar, you receive a tool, but not really receive a guide to be able to be there with you and help you and shine the light on the things that you say you want to be doing. And in the mystery school, it's all very integrated. You come to empower thyself, that's that first weekend that we do in the mystery school that is sometimes called initiation class, but it's really not a class. Like, there's things you're learning, there's things that you're quote unquote studying, but most people, it just goes way over their head. Not because it's complicated, but because there's so much alchemical change and transformation that are happening during those 2 days, that even though the material is actually quite simple on a superficial level, like it's not complicated. We're not using lots of big words that you're going to have to look up in the dictionary, and long concepts that you're going to read big essays on. It's the whole manual for 2 days is only functionally 30 pages, and some of it's pictures. So, and there's filler space in there. It's not a lot of information, but it's a lot of transformation. And so because there's so much transformation happening during those 2 days, I didn't remember anything that was taught. A week later, I couldn't have told you what we learned during those 2 days, but my life started transforming very rapidly after that. And it never stopped. The transformation never went away. And that was very remarkable to me because I had never had that kind of an experience before, whether it was in a classroom setting or even in spiritual seminars or personal growth work, which I got into all that very young. I had studied martial arts, I did yoga, and went to seminars in college on personal growth and development and that sort of thing. So our ability to harness change and transformation is drastically enhanced with initiation. It allows us to adapt to life as it really is in this moment. It allows us to start to operate beyond our programming, beyond the limitations that we've had, and to start to expand into a more quantum reality. And what I mean by that is that, the past and the future and the present are part of a looped toroidal spherical reality. It's all happening, and the navigation between these points is not linear. How I get to tomorrow should not be based on what I did yesterday. And yet, if I do nothing today to change it, it will be. That's how it goes. And so most people grow quite slowly. Their growth is very limited and often very linear.
Well,
And
because it comes back to what you were saying before, that they're copying and pasting from the past. And,
Mhm.
if we're just functionally operating from a set program, let's say starting from the age of 20, it's fully installed.
Mhm.
What's really changing over that time? Not a whole lot. And I know for myself, it's like I wanted to undo the program. I saw the pain points in my life. I saw how the program was creating issues at work. I saw how the program was creating issues in my relationships. But on my own, I didn't know how to undo that. I didn't know how to stop that. I could see it, but that wasn't enough for me to actually make change. And that's where, to your point, when I finally did the Empower Thyself initiation, it's not like I had really deep aha, now I know exactly how to change it. It was like I could finally live the change. It's like the change, it wasn't even really a problem anymore. And our teacher, sovereign obsessivist Dave Lanyon, he talks about, you want to outgrow your problem. And very quickly, to your point, I started outgrowing problems I had had all my life, really all my life. They had been there. And without even quite knowing how, I just was stepping over them. Oh, that's weird. I don't struggle with that anymore. Oh, that doesn't bother me the way it used to bother me, you know?
Because we have access to a deeper part of our mind when we get initiated. We just step into being a bigger version of us. And I don't mean a bigger version like my ego times 10 or my ego on steroids. I mean a different version of me, a higher self, eternal, divine, whatever you want to call it. These spiritual terms that we use, they don't really matter, but there is a higher part of us that is not conditioned by this physical life. It didn't come from this physical life because my ego is a result of what I've lived through in this life. In fact, when people talk about past lives, we talk about that in a certain way in the mystery school with a specific set of teachings around what that means. But yes, we are eternal, and we've been through the whole universe before we came to this physical life, and we're going to go through the whole universe when we're done with this physical life. That's one of the, if the mystery school has any belief system, that's kind of the only belief system, is that you are eternal. You're a divine, eternal spiritual being. You've never been born. You can never die. So that's one thing to give lip service to and think about as a belief system. When you really live in that way, you have no fear. There's nothing to be afraid of because you can't actually die. This programmed ego meat suit that you're experiencing life through that can bring you pain or pleasure or anything in between, that's going to die. But the consciousness, the awareness, the self goes on forever. It has gone on forever. And forever isn't a really long time. Like, well, 5 million years ago and then 10 billion years in the future. Forever means forever. It means eternal. It means it didn't ever have a beginning. It's never going to have an end. Maybe the universe will have an end. The universe seems like it's still expanding exponentially, but maybe one day it will contract and it will end. Who knows? There's different theories of that. Nobody really knows what's going to happen. It's all theories. But even if the universe ends, there will be some other universe because everything goes in cycles. Everything that's created goes in cycles. But you go on forever. And there's no way to conceive of that in the human mind. But that part of you that goes on forever comes into much closer contact with the human part of you when you're initiated, and that glass ceiling that separated them before is removed. And growth happens as a result of that, and it never stops. A person who gets initiated will continue to grow. They might use the tools more or less, depending on their millions of different factors within them. Maybe they don't really engage with the tools ever again in their life. It was just a blip in their life. They came to that weekend, they got initiated, they didn't really know what to make of it. They didn't really engage in the future. Kind of unfortunate because they found something amazing and then they just sort of let it go by the wayside, but it happens all the time. And to be able to experience something that, even though you don't understand it, leads to continuous growth forever,
including eternity, including after this life. Like, we're talking about time. It's like, for myself, I think about the different steps along the path of progression that I've taken, and as well not taken or hesitated to take. And at certain key moments, I always felt that calling within me. Okay, now's the time, now's the time, now's the time. And it wasn't till maybe sometimes years after I understood why I had to take that step, because it wasn't, maybe it was for that exact moment, excuse me, but oftentimes it was actually for a future moment, which was yet to come. But if I had not taken that step to be prepared to have the tools that I needed to have potentially the initiation, that energy structure online within me, I wouldn't have met the obstacle the way that I did, or I wouldn't have met the opportunity the way that I did. And so people can kind of be like, well, I don't really know why I need to take this step now, but I need to take this step now. And it's like, yes, that's the timing of whatever is to come, both in this physical life or potentially as you leave the physical plane, it's still going to be there working for you.
Yeah, and it's hard to talk about because there's nothing else like that. There's
No,
nothing, I
there's
mean,
no seminar that you took for 5 years in the future when that thing happened.
no, I mean, there might be some parallels that we could draw in certain ways with certain things, but to actually, it's hard to talk about the mystery school because there's nothing that's really like it on the planet where you can be initiated and it affects you in a positive way forever
No.
and gives you a set of tools that you can pick up 10 years later or 30 years later and start using, or not use at all and still grow, or use a lot and grow exponentially. So, some of the things I think I see with students, most people get initiated and then maybe a month later, they're just usually they've gone through a lot of beautiful, powerful transformations pretty quickly. New relationships, new job opportunities, new self insights, new habits and routines, new ways of thinking. Usually a lot more sense of courage and expansion, the ability to feel like they can hold a bigger container. Their capacity has grown, they can handle more, usually just within a month. Things that used to stress them out don't even stress them out. Things that used to be max capacity seem easy. And that's all in just usually 4 to 6 weeks. And then usually within 6 months, a person is starting to make some grounded new choices in their life about what they want to do and where they want to go. And, often somewhere in the 6 to 12 month mark, they're usually engaged if they're still saying, hey, I really want to grow. And it wasn't just a flash in the pan, little blip on the radar screen, but I really want to grow. They're usually working with their guide by 6 to 12 months in to do some other big thing. Maybe that's like the core region of King Solomon healing modalities that we talk about in the mystery school, and some people practice. Maybe that's a journey like Kabbalah for a year, signing up for that. Maybe it's if they want to think about doing more direct spiritual service to somebody else, maybe they go to Healers Academy in those early months or first year, and then their growth really takes off. Their growth goes exponentially up. Um,
Yeah, I know for myself, I was drawn to Healers Academy. I think I went 3 months after Empower Thyself.
yeah.
And it might sound strange to say, but it actually stabilized me in
Hmm.
my Empower Thyself work. The Healers Academy stabilized me, which feels a little bit like maybe I'll sell you the 2-day weekend, but actually you need the 5-day course to stabilize it. But what I mean
Well, I
by it
took five
was
years in between, so it's everyone has a
everyone's
patient.
different. But what I
Yeah.
mean by that is I was so governed by my mind to my detriment that was actively hurting me. And I was aware it was hurting me. And all the meditation in the world wasn't curbing, you could almost call it like an addictive mental pattern. That when I finally went to Healers Academy, because it brings you into your heart,
Well,
I
you
was
were a
like,
scientist, right?
yeah,
You have
yeah,
a master's
yeah.
degree. You were trained to,
I was
to
trained to
analyze.
just stay in the realm of the mind. That was all that I was doing, and it served me to some degree to have quote unquote success in the world. But it was extremely limiting for what you're talking about, like those glass ceilings. How I interpret it is like the mysteries of the life are here and now. But if we're not willing to go within, we're not going to see that holographically without. And so I was really unable to go deeper within myself due to this sort of constantly being in my mind. That until I went to Healers Academy, I didn't, it was all just words. Oh, go into the heart. I'm like, great, thank you. When I'll let you know when that happens. And it's not a metaphor, it's real. And through that, I broke through a lot of glass ceilings because it was like I was interacting with life from a totally different place, totally different place.
Yeah. I remember I saw you go through that change. It was super cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
It It really shifts people into their hearts. And so there's different pathways within the mystery school after initiation for like what's the right step for that individual. Um, but usually within a year, most people have stepped onto one or more of those pathways. Hopefully, sometimes maybe it takes them longer, but usually when the soul is ready, it's ready um, for something big. That's been what I've seen. Most people are like they're holding their breath in terms of knowing themselves until the stars align and the right moments and the right people are in place and they find the right kind of a system and the right kind of support and resources. And once that network is established in a person's life, often they wake up spiritually. And that's a much bigger discussion beyond the scope of just today, because we're going to wrap up soon. But as to like how and why the soul coordinates that at what time in life, because everything is being caused from the inside out. From a Hermetic mystery school perspective, our life is being caused from the inside out. So if a person wakes up spiritually, it's not random, even if it seems like that. It's not an accident that the right resources, relationships, people, guidance, and support all found that person at that time. So typically, I feel like most people, when they step onto this path, are ready for some kind of big shift, even if they don't know what it looks like yet. There's something in them that is angling toward that, is saying, yes, I'm ready. Please take my hand and show me what that could be, what that could look like for me.
I love that. So cool. And it's just such an honor to be able to provide that for people and to witness, as you would say, people's changes and growth as they walk the path and as they, we didn't really get into the healing versus progression. Maybe that's a topic for another time, but as they heal and progress in their life and start to make strides and take big steps over things that have scared them their whole life or just been stopping points their whole life and don't have to be stopping points anymore. So
Yeah. Yeah. And for some people, it's been something they've noticed for a long time. And for some people, maybe it's a new awareness. People come to this work from just really all walks of life and all levels of experience with spirituality and personal development. And some people that they've done many other things for years to try and crack open something that's been stopping them, and maybe someone else just found out 3 months ago that they're not satisfied with how things are going in their life on some level, or they just feel a misalignment and they're looking for some way to correct that misalignment and step back into their center and their place of power. So yeah.
good. Well, so wonderful to chat with you as always. And I look forward to our next conversation. Of course, if anybody listening is interested or maybe has done Empower, is looking at the next step, please reach out to Jordan and I or to your guide. And I'm sure they would be happy to direct you.
So thanks for having me, Julie. It's a pleasure. And thanks to everyone
Alrighty.
for watching.
Thank you.
Care.